Hello, in this video I'm going to be talking about IELTS Speaking Task 3. I'll go over the types of questions, the number of questions you can expect, how the examiner develops the conversation, and how you should prepare your answers. Now let's move on to talk about the types of questions you can expect. The questions in Part 3 are always related to the Part 2 topic. So the Part 2 topic might be a large company, describe a large company that you're interested in. Then you can expect questions that will be related to companies, maybe small companies, or the advantages of working for a large or small company. And here's an example of possible Part 3 questions that you would see about a large company. So how are large and small companies different? Do most people prefer to buy from larger companies? And why might some people prefer smaller companies? Some more specific examples include, do many people try to start their own company in your country? What are the advantages and disadvantages of starting your own company? And why do some people prefer working in a large company? Many people wonder how many questions you'll be asked in the Part 3. Well, the answer is 3 to 6, and that is completely depending on time. If your answers are a bit longer or you have more of a discussion with the examiner, well, then you could probably have 3 or 4 questions. But if the topic development is a little bit shorter, then you might have up to 6 questions. 6 questions is a bit rare, but that is the maximum number of questions or topics you will have to cover. It's also very much worth noting that the questions will be difficult or more difficult if the examiner thinks you're 6.5 or higher. So there are 3 levels of questions. There's kind of the basic, the medium, and the higher level. And if the examiner thinks you're 6.5 or higher, you can expect more difficult hypothetical questions. Now in Part 3, it's less about direct questions and more about developing a conversation. So let me go into some detail about how the examiner will likely develop the conversation. So the questions in Part 3 are a little bit more difficult to predict because the questions change slightly depending on the examiner. The examiner will have questions that they need to follow, but the examiner will be instructed by IELTS to change the words so that the questions never sound exactly the same twice. And the examiner will always ask at least one follow-up question depending on what you have said. So again, this is more of a discussion than simply just answering questions. Some examples of follow-up questions? Well, the examiner might ask you questions like, can you tell me more about something? What do you mean by something? Why do you think something? And can you give me an example of something? So these are the different types of follow-up questions you can expect. Obviously the topics will change, but those are the ones that they are instructed to follow up with. Well, let's move on to talk about how you should be developing your answers in Part 3. You should almost always be talking about society as a whole, and your answers should be a little bit longer. So you shouldn't just be talking about yourself, and you should be thinking about how the question is related to society, and all the questions are related to society or larger groups of people. It's always great to compare when you're giving answers, so like how one group is different from another group. Give examples. You don't have to tell the truth, but it's good to have examples. They might be examples about people you know, but it is always better to give examples that you can think of about society. Use hedging language. This means you look smarter and you look more academic if you use expressions like it seems or from what I know. These expressions show a little humility in that you might not be an expert, but these are your opinions. Well, those are the things you should know for your Part 3 IELTS speaking test. I hope they were helpful, and I wish you the best of luck on your next IELTS test.